G'day, I'm Steve Robertson for South Coast Television. I'm on a property here out in Waipinga with Paul and Robin, and we're going to talk about sheep and the economics and the pleasures of life on the land. I guess the first question for you, Paul, is how many sheep have you got and how are things going at the moment?
Okay, so we look after two properties here, Steve. So in total, 900 ewes. So of course, once you've got your lambs, that doubles. So 900 to 1800 all up.
Shearing time must be coming before too long. What happens then? What's it like?
Yep, shearing's a pretty important time of the year, and so that's what we to get the wool off, and so that normally happens the first week of November every year. So a couple of shearers, and it's a busy time of the year.
How many bales do you reckon you'll get this year?
50 to 60, 200 kg. Bales.
How are prices going? Because I know farmers are always worried about prices.
Yeah, so many would understand up until pre-COVID, we had record pricing for merino wool in Australia. Post COVID-19, the price really damaged and it was sort of half what it was pre, and so in the last 12 months the price has been just gradually lifting, and so I'm hopeful by the end of the year wool will be back at a good price.
Does most of that wool stay in Australia, or do we export, and maybe your property export a great deal of it?
Yeah, no, most of Australia's wool is all export.
Where does it go?
China.
Really?
Yeah, China mostly. Yeah.
Now, I guess on a related subject, I suppose, and particularly, Robin, I'd like to get you in on this, about the feeling that you have about the rural life. I mean, it's clearly very, very different than the life in the city or even in regional communities like Victor Harbor. What's the advantage and the appeal to you about the rural life?
I feel rural life is very family orientated because it's a generational thing where people will bring their son or their daughter up and work the farm, and so yeah.
You've always been on the land, not a city dweller?
I have been a city dweller, but I love the land much better.
And why is that? What's the
Because
appeal?
I love animals.
Okay.
And that's what I believe farming is that you love your animals. I've got 6 little lambs that I had to bring up because their mums had left them, and I just love them. They love me, I love them.
That sounds wonderful. Young people. Are enough young people being attracted now to farming to keep and sustain the industry? Robin first.
Well, I hope so, because it's a great life, and I'm sure that there will come, give them opportunity, and also more putting it out there for them, because when I was young, if I had have known that there was a rural position, I would have gone, but I didn't know when I was younger, so I worked in the city, which, didn't really suit me.
Well, it wasn't for you. Paul, what about that? The future, you think the young people are going to stick around?
Yeah, I definitely do, Steve. The reason for that is because currently in Australia, the food, from farm to plate, as they're talking, people want to know where their food comes from. People are very interested in what goes into their mouths now, and so currently pricing for grain is very good, cattle is very good, right across the board it's actually profitable, and that means that the farm can sustain younger people. So I reckon the future looks very good for the younger, and many jobs advertised. If young people are looking to get involved in the agriculture industry, now is a really great time.
Now, looking at your own business here, what gives you a personal sense of achievement out here on the land?
Well, there's actually nothing better than the caring for your stock, as Robin's just said, but seeing the whole lifestyle of the animal, the whole cycle. So you select your ewes, you with great care select your rams. You're proud as punch when you get lambs born, and so after a year, you've got ongoing ewes and lambs that you've produced, and so the whole cycle of farming is really fascinating to me and very much enjoyable.
Now that's the positive side. What are the biggest challenges that you face here on the land, particularly in your industry?
One of the main things, of course, is the weather, and so we can never control that. And so even here now in 2021, we had the latest break that we've had for a long time. We didn't have any rain until June, and we had the best lambing percentage ever, so we had lambs on the ground and no feed. And so just negotiating the climate is always, climate change is something that's been actually with us for a long time. Farmers have always had to deal with the climate and it being so unpredictable. And so that's a challenge. The other thing, of course, is your pricing. You really never know what you're going to get until you can get it. So you budget and you plan and all those things, but the weather and supply and demand pricing really affects how it ends up.
Now, considering your attachment, I'll ask you, Robin, about this, both of you, your attachment to the land, how much do you know about the history of this area going way, way back, if possible? Are you aware of what's happened here a long time ago?
Paul's the history person.
Okay.
he knows
well, originally
a lot of it, so we do.
Narundari is the indigenous folk that were here originally, Narundari, of which one of the farms that I manage is named after. So that's that. And then secondly, the farm that I manage, that farm, still has the same family on it for now over 100 years. So but the farmers, like Robin said, don't only love their livestock, but they love the land, and we care for it, because if you don't, we understand you need to look after your pastures and your trees and your waterways and all of those sorts of things. So farming's, it's a lifestyle, and we understand that our raw asset, the land and the soil and pasture and all those things, really need to be cared for.
So in a sense, really, you're sort of a traditional environmentalist, really, aren't you?
Yeah, well, you can't abuse. We're called to tend and care for the land.
You mentioned earlier about shearing. Could you describe those moments, those days when it's full-on shearing time? Somebody told me once it's like organized chaos. How does it go?
Well, it's a full-on time. So you've obviously got, keep sheep dry, so your shearers can keep shearing. So you've got a shed full of sheep. You've got sheep coming in that are emptying out in the yards.
And how many hours would say per day would you be doing?
So a shearer's day starts at 7:30, but they get there at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
They don't leave. They finish shearing. So a shearer shears 4 2-hour runs, so they're literally shearing for 8 hours a day. They're in the shearing shed for 10 hours a day, but the owner, the manager, we're there prior and post. So at the end of the day's shearing, there's all of the sheep to get in for the next day, but also the tidying up of the shed, but also getting sheep back out into the paddock. Often there's worming and backlining. There's animal health that sheep need as well.
And it's pretty tough physical work, isn't it?
Shearers are as fit as Olympians. Seriously, they need to be very fit.
and what's happened to you. You've had a few experiences shearing.
Yep, I used to be a professional shearer years ago, and still do some of our own. But yeah, look, I've got scars and a sore back to prove it.
Must be difficult finding good shearers, or is it? Do you have a pool of people you can count upon?
No, it is difficult. One of the good things about a shearing team is if you look after them, traditionally they will shear for you year in and year out. So once you get a good team like we have, we value them and look after them with everything that we have, so that we have the same team, the same shearers every year.
And what about teamwork? It seems like it's almost like a sports team out there that
Yep.
everybody has to know their role.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got shed hands, you've got rouseabouts bringing sheep in, you've got shed hands working on the board, you've got your wool classer, you've got your shearers, the whole thing. Look, for me, there's nothing more exciting than a shearing shed working well. And that's where you get your high numbers. That's when the shearers love that as well, because they get a good tally. And it's really important for everything to work effectively.
One last question, and that's for both of you. About the challenges ahead, where you see yourselves in the next few years, and particularly where you see the wool industry in this part of South Australia. I say, Robin, you want to take it first? About where the future is going for you?
Well, I'd like to be here as long as I can, and as long as my body holds out and everything, you know. But who knows? Might be able to pass it on to our son. You never know.
Does he want it?
Oh, he does. He's
yeah.
a farmer himself, yes, and he's managing a farm at the moment. So, yeah. So, yeah, but I'm not 100% sure exactly where I will be in the past.
Can I have the
In
grandson
future,
to have a look at a farming future, maybe?
Yes, this one, he's a farmer. Yes, so we'll see.
And Paul, about the future of the industry, what do you think? I mean, I know it's difficult to look into a crystal ball, but maybe some ideas on where you think it's going the next 2, 3, 4 years.
I think the future looks very good, Steve. Due to droughts, the sheep numbers back in 2010 were the lowest they've been in Australia for decades, and if not, for a century or so. And so, because of that, sheep prices, I believe, will be good for in the short term. And wool also has been steadily up until COVID in March last year. Wool had been progressively going up for 15 years in a row, and it was only COVID that brought it back down, and now it's sort of rising. So I really believe the future's looking pretty good.
Talking to Paul and Robin here on a beautiful sheep property on a beautiful day in South Australia. I'm Steve Robertson for South Coast Television.
South Coast Television, your community, your voice.